world is on fire and we have 6 years to fix it. Next on One Nation. Oh no, the era of global boiling has arrived. We're in the mix of the sixth mass extinction, and we have less than 6 years to save the planet. Hello, America. Welcome to One Nation. I'm your host, Dr. Jake Jacobs. Yes, I'm not making this up. The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres did say just a little while ago, the era of global boiling has arrived. Now, you got many eco-fascists and Marxists, they're saying we're in the midst of what they call the sixth mass extinction because of mankind, and they say we only have about 6 years to save the planet. Now, I want you to remember that 6 years because that gets us somewhere around the year 2030, as the eco-fascists like Al Gore are telling us that global boiling has arrived. Now, I want you to hear what the UN Secretary General, the Marxist UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, just said in July about global warming, now called global boiling. Here goes.
The era of global warming has ended. The era of global boiling has arrived. The air is unbreathable. The heat is unbearable. And the level of fossil fuel profits and climate inaction is unacceptable.
Yeah. Now, guys, did you hear that? He talked about fossil fuel profits. Now it's gone from global warming to global boiling. They're turning up the heat on what's happening in the world. Now, there's an excellent pamphlet from the John Birch Society called 10 Reasons Why the U.S. Should Get Out of the U.N. And I want to read to you, because I mentioned that Guterres, the UN Secretary General, was a Marxist from Peru, or is it Portugal? From Portugal, excuse me. Alger Hiss, when the United Nations was established, was a communist. He was also convicted of being a spy. Tygiv Lee, a socialist from Norway. Dag Hammarskjöld, a socialist from Sweden. U Thant, a socialist from Burma. Kurt Waldheim, a national socialist from Austria. Javier Perez de Cuellar, a socialist from Peru. Boutros Ghali, a socialist from Egypt. Kofi Annan, a socialist from Ghana. Ban Ki-moon, a socialist from South Korea. And Antonio Guterres, a communist from Portugal. People, I'm here to tell you right now, what's happening, as they call it, global boiling, is the turning up of heat of greater and bigger central government, making us spend trillions of dollars to theoretically save the planet, as the United Nations, the World Economic Forum, the European Union, and others are out to have a one world government. Now, I can remember when Joe Biden became president and his climate czar, former Secretary of State John Kerry, came to the podium, the gentleman who flies on jets, and when he's asked about flying around the world with a huge carbon footprint, and when he's asked about owning a private jet, John Forbes Kerry, whose wife is Teresa Heinz of the Heinz ketchup, billionaires and the Forbes family. People don't recognize that John Kerry and his wife are a part of the evil 1%, but I digress. But he does fly in that jet, and he wines and he dines and he goes around the world and saying how he's going to save the planet. Well, I want you to hear John Kerry talk about saving the planet and how existential it is, and we need to do something about it. Here goes.
The stakes on climate change just simply couldn't be any higher than they are right now. It is existential, and President Biden is deeply committed, totally seized by this issue, as you can tell by this executive order and by the other, the initiative of getting back into Paris immediately. That's why he rejoined the Paris Agreement so quickly, because he knows it is urgent. He also knows that Paris alone is not enough. Not when almost 90% of all of the planet's emissions, global emissions, come from outside of U.S. borders. We could go to zero tomorrow. and the problem isn't solved. So that's why today, 1 week into the job, President Biden will sign this additional executive set of orders to help move us down the road, ensuring that ambitious climate action is global in scope and scale, as well as national here at home.
Did you hear that? I mean, we need to remember the very nature of what these individuals are all about. Yeah, he jet sets around the world. He buys a beautiful home on the beach at Martha's Vineyard, where supposedly Al Gore said the ocean was going to be 10 feet higher than it is. And so these duplicitous, hypocritical individuals like Barack Obama's home on the beach in Hawaii and Bill Gates' home on the beach in San Diego, Del Mar, Al Gore and Pelosi and Biden and all these duplicitous, hypocritical Democrats who say, oh my God, the world's going to hell in a handbasket, and they're living high off the hog, raking in millions and millions of dollars off of this green tyranny crap that's going on. And I even Ocasio-Cortez a few years back in 2019 saying it's our World War II. I want you to remember what she said and remember the year and remember 2030. Here goes the socialist Ocasio-Cortez. Here goes.
I think that the part of it that is generational is that millennials and people and Gen Z and all these folks that come after us are looking up, and we're like, the world is going to end in 12 years if we don't address climate change. And your biggest issue is your biggest issue is how are we going to pay for it? And this is the war. This is our World War II.
Oh, World War II, apocalyptic, existential. The world's going to hell in a handbasket by 2030. But I'll be back for the rest of the story. Welcome back to One Nation, my fellow liberty-loving Americans. You talk about John Kerry and Antonio Guterres, the Marxists of the United Nations, and Ocasio-Cortez, the socialist, telling us we need a green raw deal and we need to spend trillions and trillions of dollars to save the planet. And then Nancy Pelosi, after they passed $1 trillion deal here last year, says we are saving the planet. And then she went, oh no, we save the planet. But now that's global boiling, and they've turned up the heat for more power, more control, more money. Well, King Charles III has unveiled a climate clock with London Mayor Sadiq Khan. And according to them, this happened in June 29th of 2023. We only have 6 years and 24 days before the end of the world as we know it. Actually, if I calculate right, we're now right around 5 years and about 325 days. So, oh my God, what are we going to do? You've got to hear Sky News talk about this event with King Charles III. Here goes.
The King yesterday helped London's Lord Mayor launch a doomsday clock warning that we only have 6 years and 24 days, 23 now, to save ourselves from terrible global warming. Okay, he was a bit standoffish. He didn't actually push the clock himself. He left the mayor to do that, but he was there. He was drawing attention to it. Is this too much?
Well, the first problem King Charles has got is that in 2009, he said we had, 8 years left. And then he reappraised that 6 years later and said we've got another 35 years left. And now here he is saying we've got 6 years and 24 days left. So he keeps changing his mind. But the big problem for King Charles is that politicians are increasingly imposing authoritarian restrictions on the population. They're making us less free. They're making us less prosperous. And so here we've got a king associating himself with the impoverishment of the population. We're socially poorer, we're economically poorer. The second problem King Charles has got is that the environmental movement has been overtaken by socialists, by Marxists. Well, they are not his friends. They are anti-capitalism, they're anti-Western civilization, they're anti-freedoms. And so after they've used King Charles up, they'll be coming for him.
Did you hear that? I've been saying this. We here at Freedom Project Media have been saying this for a long, long time. I've been saying this for 30 years. They've been taken over by authoritarians, by socialists, by Marxists. John Kerry says, Paris isn't enough. We need more. Donald Trump could see through the ruse of the Paris Accords and got us out of it because he knew it was a bunch of balderdash. Now, I think it's interesting that when I was in high school and I had to read Population Bomb by Paul Ehrlich and his other book called The End of Affluence, if you look at these individuals, they're actually Malthusians who think there are too many people in the world. They actually are anti-capitalist, anti-democracy individuals who believe there should be a central controlled government to theoretically save the planet. There's nothing new under the sun, and it is true that now the movers and the shakers within this global movement are actually socialists and Marxists, and the King of England is being used like a puppet. Now, there's an organization called the Center for Biological Diversity. They call themselves, they're an environmental group that has deep values of sustaining and promoting both biological and cultural diversity. They welcome and embrace and respect people, diversity of people identities, abilities, cultures, and they call for equity. Now, it's interesting how they take this kind of BIPOC, LGBT, alphabet people stuff, all this social engineering stuff, and they shake it, mix it up with saving the planet and climate boiling to create their organization of Center for Biological Diversity. They're out of Tucson, Arizona. I know about them intimately. Well, they're having a big rally, an anti-capitalistic, anti-democracy rally in New York City on September 17th. Join the march. End fossil fuels. These individuals are radicals. They have 17 principles of environmental justice where they say we, the people of color, need to stop fossil fuels. They talk about the sacredness of Mother Earth. They talk about giving reparations where the United States will give money, billions and trillions of dollars to African nations and third world nations because we have used fossil fuels to destroy the planet. They talk about stopping 500 years of colonization and oppression, resulting in the poisoning of our communities, our land, and creating genocide. These left-wing loonbirds are absolutely woke socialist fanatics. They have one of their top lawyers. Her name is Jean Zhu. She's a lawyer for the Center for Biological Diversity. On Earth Day of 2023, gave a speech, and I want you to listen closely to what she said as she's demanding that Joe Biden declare a national climate emergency. Here goes.
He can declare a climate emergency and stop all new fossil fuel approvals. That's right. He can actually revoke Willow and start our new, just clean energy transition. We don't want the same utilities. We want community energy and storage and affordable, resilient rooftop solar. That's a beautiful, beautiful future. And President Biden actually has the powers to do that. I'm an attorney. We've written about it. He can do it. So woo! That's right. So here's the other good news with everything. I want you to turn next to your friend, your mom, your sister. That's right. All of you amazing ladies right here who are 14 years old. Turn to them and say, who's got the power? We got the power. Who's got the power? We got the power. Who's got the power? We got the power.
Who's got the power? We've got the power. I just shrill when I hear this fanatical left-wing lawyer, this organization out of Tucson, Arizona. And I've been there. I've seen this organization firsthand. I've seen what they attempted to do. What this is all about when she cries out, who's got the power? We got the power. This lawyer has sent a diktat to the President of the United States saying he must declare immediately a national climate emergency where he can receive up to 130 powers, unconstitutional powers, where he can, in essence, ration gas, end drilling of oil in Alaska, in Texas, and in the Gulf of Mexico. They can actually get rid of gas stoves. They can determine, they can destroy the internal combustion engine. They can actually determine what you use in your house for what you eat and how you heat. I'm not making any of this up. And they want the long arm of the central power of the deep swamp to come into your homes, into your garage, into your automobiles, into your pantries to determine how you now shall live. You can call it Eco-Fascism, or eco-tyranny, or green tyranny. Or you know what? You can call it eco-socialism. So listen to what I just said. Eco-tyranny, green tyranny, eco-socialism, Karl Marx. It truly is not conspiratorial craziness to tell you. Many of us have been aware of the fact that when Ocasio-Cortez says that the world's going to come to an end in 12 years, when that socialist, that lover of Marxism, when these Marxists and socialists say, now we've got a tool that we can use to divide and conquer, to control, to expand central government from the United Nations to the World Economic Forum to the European Union, we can actually now accomplish our goal by the year 2030. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the Chilton versus the Center for Biological Diversity. Chilton versus the Center for Biological Diversity. It's a story about a dear friend of mine. His name is Jim Chilton. When I was down in Tucson, Arizona, I went to Arivaca, Arizona, and I stayed at the rancher Jim Chilton, 84-year-old rancher at 50,000 acres. Going all the way down to the border with Mexico. A 5-mile gap in the wall. He called it the Biden Gap. He called the wall the Trump wall. He called the security on the border the Trump security. And then he said, but Jake, literally hundreds of thousands of millions of illegal aliens are surging, to quote Joe Biden, to the border, beyond the border, with their human sex trafficking, with their Chinese-based fentanyl, all the way up into Green Bay, Wisconsin, Bismarck, North Dakota, Buffalo, New York, and Seattle, Washington. And besides that, he told me about a court case that made it to the Supreme Court in Arizona. He was living peaceably on his 50,000-acre ranch with 1,000 head of cattle in Arivaca, Arizona. And the organization out of Tucson, the Center for Biological Diversity, came after him. They said that his ranching was an anti-environmental project, and that he was harming the flora, harming the animals, harming the bugs, the birds, the bees. And one specifically was a chub. It's like a smelt, a small fish. And they said that he was actually doing destruction on his ranch area. Jim Chilton is a tough dude. Jim said to me when I was in his home this past winter, when we went down to the border, he said, I wasn't going to let them push this old cowboy around. I'm not a wimp. They're not going to push me off my land. And so what he did is he hired 2 experts from the University of New Mexico who came to his acreage, his 50,000 acreage, went all over his land. They studied the grasses. They studied the flora. They studied the streams. They studied the animals within that land. They studied the fish. And they concluded that not only was he not harming the land, he was actually helping the land to flourish. And bottom line is, he took him to court, and he won his case. In fact, he got punitive damages for their libel and their slander and their deception. When we were down on his ranch, we were in an area called the Marijuana Flats. It's an area that used to be a hangout for the hippies back in the 60s and 70s, thus the name Marijuana Flats. As we're sitting there having lunch, okay, we see 4 cartel members go up through the hills behind us there. We chased after them. We didn't catch them, okay? But the point isn't to talk about the evil, bastardly cartel. The point is that area called Marijuana Flats, what that Center for Biological Diversity did is they sent pictures to the EPA and other organizations and said, do you see what's happened on his land? It's wearing down the grasses. It's polluting the area. Well, what they didn't tell them, it was where all those hippies and all the people used to hang out in that area. They actually deceived the court. And when the judge found out, he fined them $500,000 for their lies. That same organization, Center for Biological Diversity, they're the same ones that right now are saying to President Biden, do you not know what's going on in Texas and Arizona? The actual open border policies are hurting all kinds of animals in the Rio Grande, the Del Rio area, and in the Arizona area. So we've got to allow the borders to remain open because that is going to help the environment, which is not true. If you saw the pollution and the things that the cartel and the millions and millions of illegal aliens have brought into the country, that's a lie. That organization is a deceitful, lying organization. Now, in the beginning of this show, you heard me list off all the United Nations General Secretaries who are either socialist or Marxist. Now, there's an agenda. It's called the UN Agenda 2030. This is not out of some conspiratorial nut job book. You can look this up on your own. They have 17 principles of expanding central government control, of dictating how we shall live our lives. This is so important for us to remember. This socialist Ocasio-Cortez, 12 years, do the math. That's like early 2031. The clock right now has us at the doomsday climate clock has us at late 2029. Anywhere from late 2029 to early 3031, it's the end of the world as we know it. Well, I want you to hear, how would that have been 6 years ago, July of 2017, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres reinforming the importance of Agenda 2030. Take a listen.
The Agenda 2030 is an agenda aiming at a fair globalization. It's an agenda aiming at not leaving anyone behind, eradicating poverty, and creating conditions for people to trust again in not only political systems, but also in multilateral forms of governance and in international organizations like the UN. And indeed, if one looks at the global megatrends, population growth, climate change, food insecurity, water scarcity, chaotic urbanization in certain parts of the world, it is also true that all these megatrends are interacting with each other, are strengthening each other, and we need to recognize that climate change became the main accelerator of all other factors. And as climate change is the main accelerator of all other factors, this is also the moment to clearly say that linked to the 2030 Agenda of Sustainable Development, there must be a very strong reaffirmation of our commitment to the Paris Agreement and to its implementation with an enhanced ambition, because the Paris Agreement by itself is not enough for the objectives that the world needs in relation to global warming.
Do you hear what they're all saying? John Kerry, the Marxist Antonio Guterres, right? Joe Biden, the Paris Accords, they're not enough. We need more government. We need more money. We need more power. It used to be climate changing. Now it's climate boiling. This propaganda, this agitprop rhetoric is being turned up. They're turning up the heat as we get closer and closer and closer to 2030. There's an excellent book out there by Arthur Thompson called The UN's Agenda 2030, Marxist Stealth Plan for World Government. Marxist Stealth Plan for World Government. I would highly, highly recommend. It's a small read, but it's a big understanding. Arthur Thompson has been talking about this for many, many years. And it's sad to say that what he says in this book is coming more truthful as days go on, where climate change becomes climate warming and then becomes climate boiling. They are master propagandists. Stalin would be proud. They want more power, more money, more control over you and over me. They want to control what we eat. No meat, eat bugs. How we heat, get rid of the internal combustion engine. They want to get rid of gas stoves, what we drive, EVs. And they want to determine how far we go and where we go. They want power. They want international central power to create their utopic world of dystopic insanity. And they will eventually do it by any means necessary. We must not let them.